That, my friends, is a lot of Spider-Boy number ones. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So this past weekend, we had the Heritage Platinum auction. Of course, my video yesterday covered the comic book side of things. But in this video, I wanted to talk about the original art that went up for sale, most notably this Frank Frazetta Conan novel cover that sold for $13.5 million. Unbelievable. The price that was put on this incredible piece of, fantasy historical artwork. And in this video, we're going to talk about that. But of course, before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate it. Helps support the channel doing those things. But there you guys see it. Frank Frazetta Conan novel cover painting from 1967. This is the original artwork by Frank Frazetta himself, selling for $13.5 million. Conan wrapping up the I guess you would call that a gorilla character right there. This is what it looks like framed. And at $13.5 million, this is not only one of the highest paid prices that Frank Frazetta original artwork has ever got, but this is literally, I think, the fifth highest selling item that Heritage Auctions has ever had. Now, if I did this correctly, I believe you can go over to Heritage Auctions and view their past sales. You guys can see that they've sold 7,181,285 sold things. And if you sort it by highest first, you can see that the most expensive thing they ever sold was this Dmitry Muratov Nobel Peace Prize medal that sold for $103 million. Then, of course, they had the Wizard of Oz slippers, the Dorothy ones that sold at the end of last year that a lot of people talked about, $32.5 million. Then we had this in-game worn Babe Ruth jersey when he called his shot, $24 million. We have the sled Rosebud from Citizen Kane at $14.7 million. And then this one right here, Frank Frazetta, this recent oil painting that went up for sale, $13.5 million, the fifth highest priced item that has ever been sold. And it was truly special. I mean, again, a little bit of a caveat here. This had its own auction specifically in separation from the original art that went up for sale. But I'm kind of lumping it together because I think that the reason that they had its own auction and this was the only lot in that auction was because they just knew that this was going to be such a massive sale that they had to put kind of a special highlight on it. But really, truly incredible. And congratulations to the buyer on this thing. It's always kind of cool to see, the wear and tear that actually exists on the painting. Again, one of the most notable Conan images that had been created by Frank Frazetta, who, of course, I think a lot of people give credit to, elevating Conan into the character that we know him today. All right, but talking about the Heritage Platinum auction, they had a bunch of things go on sale. And like it's kind of been, I feel like a lot of the highest ticketed items in recent auctions for Heritage have been from the art side. I have had many conversations about, comic book collectors sort of moving their money over into the art side of things. And I think that the recent sales for this continue to demonstrate that that is the case. Now, we had this other Frank Frazetta piece that sold the cover to Eerie magazine number 81, this one called Queen Kong, which is, of course, a homage to King Kong, selling for $1,093,750. Just another incredible number for an original Frank Frazetta piece of art. I mean, at this point, all of his artwork sells almost in this price range, at least when we're talking about, a lot of the oil paintings. They had one oil painting last auction that sold for $500,000, but either way, it's going to be in the upper end of the six-figure range, if not the seven-figure range. And even his, sketch arts at this point, we had one in this auction that sold for $100,000, but it's pretty incredible. All right, another big sale here is probably this one. This one was really surprising to me, but this is a splash page by Barry Windsor-Smith for Marvel Comics Presents number 81. Of course, this is the Weapon X storyline. Barry Windsor-Smith, legendary creator, creating the origin of Wolverine. And this one's selling for $425,000. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is probably one of the absolute best splash pages that has come out of that entire series. And so I understand that, this was definitely going to be a six-figure, piece. But at the same time, I mean, maybe 150, 200, 250, 300 even. A lot of even comic art covers don't even get up to the $425,000 price range that this one went for. But, Barry Windsor-Smith, I feel like his artwork, especially in relation to this particular series, just time and time again, showing up. I mean, even the other pages that maybe aren't as, exciting or don't have as nice imagery also do sell for a premium. I haven't seen a Weapon X page go go for less than, $50,000. So I think like, there's just a lot of collectors out there that really want their hands on, what is essentially one of the most, revered Marvel pieces of storytelling and pieces of art that has ever been done. So very impressive sale for the Weapon X splash page right here, 425,000. Again, congratulations to that buyer. All right, moving on now to another interesting sale. We had the Amazing Spider-Man number 57. Of course, the cover done by John Romita Sr., selling for $375,000. Now, what I think is really interesting about this is that here you have a Silver Age page that is done by John Romita. Admittedly, I don't know if this is necessarily everyone's, favorite cover. I'm not sure how many people are, hardcore ASM 57 is their favorite book of all time. But I do think that there is something to, say that, Todd McFarlane pages, especially in Spider-Man, recently he had that, his cover of Mysterio on it, if you guys know the one from the Copper Age, and that one sold for more than this one did here in the $400,000 price point. So what makes art interesting is that it doesn't necessarily matter that, there's a page coming out of the Copper Age versus a page coming out of the Silver Age. The Copper Age stuff, because these are one of ones, and depending on who the artist is, and definitely the aesthetics of the page itself, play a major role. There's no print count here like there is in comic books. So being that this got 375, still a very, very impressive number, but less than some of the later Spider-Man covers that maybe have, kind of more interesting art on it. But again, no shade to John Romita. Of course, he's a legend here, and this is still a pretty awesome sale. All right, moving on now to another amazing sale. This one was actually the cover art for the auction itself. This one is Batman Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth, page 31, kind of like almost like a full splash page, although it does share two panels there, done by Dave McKean. And this one's selling for $362,500. An unbelievable piece of work. Just really, really cool, really trippy artwork with the Joker right there. And then you kind of have like the ambiguous Batman. Of course, we had the massive art sale for Jock when he did his, iconic cover for Joker. And now we have this one right here, kind of following it up. So I don't know. The Joker fans are definitely big art fans, and they're definitely coming to play. And it seems to be snowballing for this character overall, much like it is snowballing for this one. Bernie Wrightson, Swamp Thing number 4, splash page of page number 4. This one from 1973, selling for $87,500. Just an incredible depiction of Swamp Thing, very, very moody, Bernie Wrightson style. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this one is that, yes, it's a big number, but also, Bernie Wrightson also sort of showing, to be kind of one of the more desired artists, at least in terms of like comic book collectors being ported over into the comic art sales. I mean, Bernie Wrightson pieces are just really, really hard to come by time and time again as I'm watching these auctions and learning more about the art. It's the Bernie Wrightson ones that keep on performing. It's the Barry Windsor-Smith ones that keep on performing. And, there's just certain types of artists that people like to follow, Todd McFarlane, things like that. And it makes a lot of sense because you have this generation of collectors that are coming into the space. These are the books that they grew up with. These are the images that they remember. These are the artists that they, have a fondness for. And these are the pages that are now performing. All right, moving forward now to another sort of modern comic art that is getting a little bit of love. Or I guess it's kind of modern. I mean, 1994, depends on what you consider modern. But this one right here is Mike Mignola's Hellboy Seed of Destruction number 3, selling for $81,250. This is one that I just kind of, started tracking because I was like, oh, that's a cool piece. That's an awesome cover done by Mike Mignola. This one might be a cool one to pick up. And little did I know that it was going to sell for what it did, because at $80,000 for, 1994 Hellboy creator, that's pretty darn good. I mean, granted, Mike Mignola pieces are always, desirable. You can see right here some of the recent prices, $228,000, but that one, of course, being for Batman 428, $180 for 429. But this one right here, for Hellboy, this is his most expensive price. Of course, this cover selling for $66,000, and then another cover selling for $55,000, in 2024 and 2021. So, maybe Mike Mignola as an artist and his, the work that he's doing on Hellboy is really starting to catch some of that steam. All right, next up here, speaking of impressive artists, we have Todd McFarlane doing a Spider-Man number 2, story page number 10, selling for $68,750. The reason why I want to talk about this one is that, yeah, it's a pretty cool page. definitely have some nice depictions of Spider-Man, him kind of going through the window right there. And I always kind of like it when the original art pages have like an all black, sort of border, really sort of makes it stand out. Very, very heavy inking on this one, which is, always really nice to see. But what's interesting to me about it is just how expensive Todd McFarlane pieces are. I mean, it's a nice page, but 68,000, it's anyone who has wanted to get a Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. I mean, you better have a decent budget, to be able to spend that type of money. I mean, obviously his covers are selling for tons and tons of money. This is the Mysterio one I referenced earlier for $456. But then we also had this splash page right here selling for $216,000. This is the one that turned a lot of heads for people going, I can't believe, someone paid that number for basically an interior page and not a cover. But, even when this one, which I would say is maybe not quite as cool as the previous one I just showed, still high five-figure range. So hard to get your hands on Todd McFarlane's, very, very competitive. All right, last couple of interesting art pieces I wanted to talk about was this Alex Schomberg Overstreet Comic Price Guide number 21. Of course, his classic Invaders cover here selling for $55,000 from 1991. Always kind of fun and cool to see this. Of course, Schomberg, one of the most celebrated artists out of the Golden Age, was very well known for creating and drawing these characters. This right here being, the cover of an Overstreet, I think is just kind of a fun piece. All right, last two ones to talk about. Got to give a shout out to the Marvel card art fans out there. Bob Larkin, Flair, Ultraman, X-Men 94, Greatest Battles, Wolverine versus the Sentinels. This piece selling for $45,000 from Flair Ultra X-Men 94. I mean, it's an awesome piece of work for, Bob Larkin with Wolverine, fighting the Sentinels. But what's interesting to me is that, I don't know, Flair Ultra X-Men 94, very cool set, but not necessarily one of the most notable. And for that price, I mean, look at the size of this thing. I mean, this is actually the original art. So the art is kind of, drawn more inward on the piece that was done on. But you guys can see from the image, it's 10 by 7.5. So not a very big piece. This is actually rather small. And to get $45,000, I mean, you got to say, I feel like the Marvel art card fans are showing up. All right, and the last piece I wanted to talk about was one that I wanted to buy, but it sold for more than I wanted to pay. This one is Peach Momoko, Marvel Rivals #1, the Psylocke variant cover. I don't know if you guys remember this one. This was the exclusive that came out for C2E2 and selling for $16,250. I kind of thought that maybe I could slide in these Heritage bidding DMs and kind of sneak in a snipe for this thing, maybe pay under 5 figures, but boy, was I wrong. Peach Momoko at this point is cementing herself as one of the most desired current artists as far as their original art is concerned. I mean, this one right here, her depiction of Psylocke is fantastic. I really love what she did with this variant cover. Granted, it is a, retail exclusive. So I was a little bit like iffy on this one, thinking like, I don't know if I want to buy, the retail exclusive original art as much as I want to do like the official published original art. But at the same time, I was still willing to pay, a decent amount of money for this, but certainly not enough, $16,250. But I should have known because all of her art pieces are going in the, 5-figure range, well into the 5-figure range. This right here, her Magic one selling for $19,200, $18,000 there for a Star Wars, $15,600, $12,600, $12,600. So again, time and time, she keeps continuing to perform with her art pieces. Anyways, that's all for this one. That was me going over a few of the interesting sales from this recent Heritage auction. Of course, there were a lot of beautiful, incredible art pieces that went up for sale. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about them all, but again, art is definitely showing up, but none bigger than this one right here, Frank Frazetta, Conan, $13.5 million. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about original art? How do you guys think the art market is performing right now? And what do you guys think about this sale right here? The 5th highest selling thing that's come out of Heritage. If I was able to search it correctly, let me know if I'm wrong, but $13.5 million. Would you pay that? Anyways, that's all for this one. Thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See y'all in the next video.